isn't it? Tell people what you own, and you invite attacks from those strong enough to challenge you. Don't tell people what you own, and you won't dissuade those who fear you. Right, poor Sakoge. You really get the ass end of life. I checked the position of the moon, judging how far it had moved since I'd entered the water on the other side of the lake, some 2,000 paces distant. The Baron would retire from the party, make love with his wife in her chambers, or with one of her ladies, or a maid, in a side room he kept for the purpose, and then use the Lord's privy before retiring to his own chambers on the top floor. Classic defensive weaknesses of any fortification. How shit comes in, and how shit goes out. Here, the garderobe overhung the water, so I was able to find the privies by their smell. The chute was narrow, probably as much to minimize how much wind blew up on your nethers as for defense. The chute didn't start until 5 paces above the water, and its narrowness meant every surface was slick with effluents. With slimy fresh diarrhea caked over the top of crumbly feces, dried and aged into soil, there was no telling where the cracks in the rock were. I glanced up, saw that none of the guards were looking, and then something caught my eye behind me, a shadow in the waters. More than one. Dozens. Fucking fanged fish. Undeniably stupid, but I'd heard they could smell blood for a league. Apparently I should have believed it. With a surge of my talent, I shot out of the water. I stabbed fingers and bare toes into the shit-slick walls, pushed off, twisted, leapt for the inside wall of the chute, twisted, and had both my left hand and left foot betrayed by bad holds. I fell, fingers clawing at the walls, toes scratching, tearing off toenails, finally stopped. I gave myself a few deep breaths, and then launched upward again with magic-augmented strength. This time, I bounced lightly from one side to the other. Almost at the top, I found the remains of a grate. It must have been installed hundreds of years ago, because the iron was corroded to little more than nubs sticking out of each wall. Too much trouble to replace, apparently, or too gross. Now it made good footholds for the very kind of man it had originally been intended to keep out. The problem with a place like Chateau Chéon wasn't that it had a weakness. Every castle has weaknesses. The problem was that when you steal a chateau from Gwinvere Kirena, you have an enemy who knows your weaknesses exhaustively. If I'd thought there was a grate in the chute, well, I could have made it through regardless. But most assassins wouldn't have tried the garderobe. Certainly not first. Balancing on the stubs of the grate, ignoring my bleeding toes, I drew a plain saw. The privies were a simple board, oak, with 3 holes in it. 3, so you and 2 friends can drop mud together, I guess. Call me unsociable, but no thanks. Regardless, if Gwynvere's intelligence was still accurate, the board was fitted with a lock and bolted down. No one even had the key to that lock anymore. I picked the middle hole, setting the plain saw to work, inscribing a circle slightly larger than the current one. "This goes against everything you've lived for. Gaelan, this isn't you." "No, this isn't Gaelan. There is no Gaelan. I'm nameless." No one came to use the Lord's privies in the time I was there. Lucky. It does happen. That's the thing. If you're prepared to get shit on and do your work anyway, sometimes you get lucky. Over the distant sounds of laughter and carousing, you will be alone. You will be separate. Always. I listened for footsteps. None. I scraped some feces off the wall next to my head, reached my hand up through the right side privy hole, and plopped the feces on the seat. I pulled an empty leather wine bag, smaller than my clenched fist, from where it was rolled flat under my belt. I opened it, balanced somewhat precariously on the great stubs, and pissed in the bag. Then I poured the urine liberally around the left side privy's seat. I'd barely finished when the door banged open.